want to see my impression of the inimitable James Cagney? Okay, you dirty rat. I'm gonna get you, you dirty rat.
And that sound is the start of another Missal for the Masses. I'm your host, Gary, and this is the Chaplain's Assistance Motorpod, the podcast where I talk about a G.I. Joe toy, vehicle, playset, or even a trailer from A Real American Hero toy line from 1982 to present. And also, every episode, I touch a little bit about what's going on in my life of collecting, or news or current events in the realm of military and adventure toy lines. I'm going to begin this Missal with the fact that it is now July. It is Cobra Convergence 7. And every year I will make each episode Cobra-centric. But later on this month, on July 13th, my Cobra Convergence entry will be published. And I'm recording all these in advance, so it's going to be a little light on the current events, just because I want to make sure that everything's coming out on time, and I'm going to worry more about my review content than what's actually going on. But that's not to say I'm not going to talk about something. To start this episode, I'm going to say I opened up my Cobra Command 3-pack from 1997. That I got from Joe Fest, mainly because I wanted to see how it was and just, get the figures out. The package was damaged, which I enjoy. I just wanted to experience the figures in hand. And I will say this, the Cobra Commander being in dark blue I'm not going to say doesn't really do much for me, especially because they lost the hose on his helmet. Baroness in blue actually stirs up something for me. I think it is a nice contrast to the black figure. I'm still holding out hope that we'll get a proper blue and gold Baroness in O-ring form, where the closest we've gotten is the Super 7 reaction figure, but it just doesn't fit with the rest of the O-ring line. I do appreciate their effort, but it's just not tickling that itch quite yet for me. And the modern version, I'm just didn't hit the right spots either. But then there was Destro, the version 5 Destro from 1997. I did not get the Profit Director or the Pimp Daddy Destro variant. It's just the standard early release Destro with the pink launcher. And the reason why I'm pointing out the pink launcher is I had to check this for myself. I did a modicum of research before recording. Didn't really find anything definitive or even mentioning it, but the spring-loaded launcher in the Destro version 3 from 1992 comes with 2 red discs, is black, and it's, like I said, spring-loaded. The 1997 Destro version 5 comes with 3 discs, bonus, but mine has no spring installed, so it's the old finger flick technology. The opening up the package, what I paid for it. The winner is Baroness. I like the chrome on Destro's head better than the version 3 chrome, so maybe that's a head swap and see how that works out. And then Cobra Commander, or the Blue Fred series Cobra Commander, really fell flat for me. In mail calls, I just got my Arctic Bat G.I. Joe Classified. I do have a little bit of a Bat's focus in my upstairs display. I have, the version 1, the version 2. I have the Overlord mini set, the mail away direct-to-consumer set, which was repainted Bats version 2s in a really nice, the Inferno Bats. And I really like that set. And part of the display, I also have classified series bats, in the background. It's great because they pop, especially in the back. allows, to have something in the foreground and in the background. I haven't opened up my Crimson Bat yet, but now what stood out for me on the Arctic back was an absolute new head sculpt. So while there is a lot of reuse of parts, not going to lie, there is enough new to make this figure fresh. I did post that I'm cooling off on G.I. Joe Classified, but this figure is a little special with the chainsaw hand. I can see that becoming fodder for a lot of people wanting to make a 6-inch custom Ash figure from the Evil Dead. The head with the monocular vision, has little ports. It's very futuristic, very, cyberpunk. It has a new chest plate, and it has a sniper rifle on the back with bipod. The only things, the confusing thing was it came with the standard Bats backpack and not really much to go in the backpack. It did come with the standard head in white. I don't need to use that. I like variety. And really not much else. It has the pistol and the holster and everything, moves around, and it's built. The quality on mine seems to be okay. It's a solid, reuse of parts. It's a decent G.I. Joe Classified figure. I'm happy I have one. It definitely belongs with what I'm collecting now and my small, not trying to make it an overwhelming focus, but a nice little pocket for my display. And, I'm happy I have them. And I think it was, worth the price of admission for me. Now, the theme of Cobra Convergence 7 this year is Cobra, Spies, and Saboteurs. Looking at vehicles and stuff. And, right, like I said, this isn't my focus, but, the preeminent Cobra Saboteur is Firefly. And I had to think, what is an iconic Firefly vehicle? Many people will say the Ferret, which I already reviewed. They're going to say the Night Landing Craft, which I already reviewed. But what about version 2 Firefly? I remember that Firefly version 2 is known for 2 vehicles. The first one being the Paralyzer. And that's what's on his file card. But the other vehicle I remember Firefly driving, mainly from the box art, is the Cobra Rat from 1992. To start off with the Cobra Rat, there is a very nice write-up in one of the volumes of Dan Klingensmith's Creating G.I. Joe. And it goes about showing how the concept, began and how it got the name Rat from being a mouse-like object when it was being constructed. And it is absolutely a value vehicle. And I don't know, it gets a lot of hate online. It is considered by some to be the worst toy from the G.I. Joe line. So there's some preconceived notions about this. And I have one. Unfortunately, mine doesn't have any of the stickers. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a bad thing. But I have this big red oversized mouse with a spring-loaded launcher on it. Let's dig in. Now, the Cobra Rat from 1992. We take a look at the box art real quick, and it is a nice 3/4 view showing Firefly driving the Rat, firing off the multiple Gatling guns, and launching one of the spinning rotors from the side. It's important on the box, I want to point this out, that it is launching the correct rotor from the correct side. And the other rotor on the other side of the Rat doesn't launch. It's more of a storage position. So that's a good eye on the illustrator for the box art. And, on the box, you got the flak rotors really launch, and it's the Rat, the high-speed attack hovercraft. And you have the little spinning discs mowing down the foliage. So right now, this is an angry lawnmower on the box, piloted by the saboteur, Firefly. And on the back, highlighting the flak rotors really launch, and it tells you that you got the turbo engines, it has a pivoting canopy, a flak rotor launcher, and hidden rolling wheels. There's also 2 rotating slicer blades and double-barreled rotating machine guns. The one thing I would like to see on this box is the flag points. I'm looking at the images on 3D Joe's, and maybe the flag points weren't on the front or back of the box. Maybe it was on one of the other 4 sides. Because this is widely considered one of the cheapest G.I. Joe vehicles, it would just be interesting to see if it carried any Hasbro premiums. The Cobra Rat is made up of very few pieces of plastic. You have the black Dumbo wheels on the bottom. You have the front Dumbo wheels that have essentially a gear, it's like a cross that turns the spinning rotor blades in the front. You have this massive red shell where upon you clip the black rotor launcher and the black machine guns, the black canopy, and also the red turbine or jet engines. And it's very simple. It's very few pieces. It's only 2 colors. Any other detail you're going to get is going to be with the sticker sheet where it's, molded in green, in black, in purple. And in the case of the rat stickers, rather than using a clear sticker with the green rat lettering, they went with a red sticker with the green rat. So that's fine. It's the way they did the sticker sheets back in the 90s. They were a little more cheaply produced. And I'm just going to say this. Right now, I'm not a huge fan of the decals. I know that I need to look up toy hacks for my Cobra Rat. Maybe I've been pleased I used Toy Hacks decals on my Cobra Invader. Maybe they will have done a better job with these stickers as well. And we'll take a look at the blueprints. This is going to be a quick and easy. You have, number 1, the gyrating slicer blades with underbrush defoliation barbs. So, lawnmower blades. I also like the use of the term gyrating. That brings out a different image in my mind other than, spinning. So it's kind of funny. Like I said, I love picking apart the adjectives and the descriptions in these. You have the number 2, the double-barreled rotating machine guns with high-velocity dispersion scanners. So let's break this down. On each side of the driver, you have these Gatling guns. It's a double-barreled Gatling gun on either side. And it's funny because in the box art, it shows all the barrels firing at once. And a Gatling gun spins. So only one barrel is firing at once, allowing the barrel to cool until it gets chambered again, which allows for a higher cyclic, more bullets, more destruction, more deadly. And with this Cobra Rat, with its mousy looks, it needs all the help it can get in the firepower department, and I'm here for that. Each one pivots left to right. It faces forward. They can also converge a little bit, so the line of sight means if you wanted to line them up center to fire center, so you could fire essentially 4 bullets at one point, it can do that. But then they also turn over 90 degrees, so it even faces its flanking position even a little bit behind the direct left or right. They have a decent mold. It's a 6 barrels, and I'm trying to find the high velocity dispersion scanners, and I don't really have anywhere on the gun itself for where I could see a scanner on that. I would think that the scanner would be somewhere mounted on top of the canopy. A good decal in the center of the canopy really would make it stand out, but that's called out as another thing. It's called out as the titanium reinforced pivoting canopy. Okay, never mind. The canopy flips up, which is nice. It doesn't flip forward and makes ample room for putting your Cobra character of choice. Sonic Fighter's Major Blood is used in the catalog. And looking inside the canopy, this is one thing that I like. There's a lot of neat detail inside the cockpit. You have a molded seat with some texture to make it look like wrinkled fabric, and laying across it is the seat belt. I could see if this was made in 88, 89, ample room for the ubiquitous seatbelt that they used those years. In front, there is a little control panel. You have, it looks like 2 screens with some buttons on the bottom. There's a dial on top, a little wire mold into the top of this, just gives it nice detail for the control. On each side of the character, there's some padding for their thighs. So this way, if this thing was rocking left to right, shifting him around like a bumper boat, he's got some padding there. You have 2 joysticks for each hand, and they're reasonably reachable. And then on the back, by the character's shoulders, you got a little more neat little detail for just adding to the atmosphere of the cockpit. Now I'll move on to number 4, the short recoil Dagron reinforced flak rotor launcher. And that is on the left or port side of the Rat. It is, I've found that to twist the rotor on, sometimes I have to twist it by hand, and the spring is strong enough and it will launch the rotor pretty far. And let's get to it. The anti-aircraft flak rotors with stabilizer control spokes. I think it's interesting that these flak rotors are anti-aircraft. Flak to me stands more for an anti-infantry weapon. And they're calling these the stabilizer control spokes. In reality, these are the blades that, when this rotor spins, launches it into the air. So it's essentially an airfoil or, wings. It's a gimmick. I know that a lot of people aren't thrilled with this. And I am personally, I would on this like more of a conventional spring-loaded missile launcher. But I also like, things that are neat and unique. And this falls into the unique category. I don't know how effective this would be against flying aircraft. It's unique enough to provide, for me, its own little charm. We move on to the number 6, the shock-resistant wheels with extra grip trench climbing treads. Let's go back. This is the Rat, the high-speed attack hovercraft. Hovercrafts float on a bed of air. Why are we talking about the wheels? It's kind of been like one of an unwritten rule of G.I. Joe. You don't call out the suspension of disbelief on the blueprint, much less the box. And, we all know the G.I. Joe whale has 4 little wheels, but we don't call that out and say, oh yeah, look at these great wheels. This is a huge, in my opinion, mistake. Yes, they're there. As a kid, yeah, it's to help it roll and play, but we shouldn't. It's the elephant in the room. You don't talk about it. But one thing I do want to talk about these shock resistance wheels with extra grip trench climbing treads is the fact that the ones in front, the ones that spin to engage the gyrating slicer blades, because there's not a lot of grip on these. This is the standard dumbbell construction. In my experience, on a hardwood floor or a other smooth surface, there's not enough friction to turn the wheel to overcome, the gear mechanism to turn the blades. On carpet or on other rough surface where it's bringing the traction to the wheel, it will work at that point. But generally on a smooth surface, I haven't gotten it to really engage the spinning, gyrating blades. And to me, why are we calling these, extra grip trench climbing treads when they don't really have much grip? And then finally, number 7, the jet-powered turbo engines with aerodynamic vortex chargers. And that's a whole bunch of sci-fi gobbledygook, and these are laughably large. They look something straight out of Star Wars, popped on to this Cobra Rat. There's a lot of good detail on the top of them. To me, detail shows effort, right? There's a modicum of detail, enough to satisfy somebody with an acrylic pen or paintbrush, and there's even a little bit of an airfoil that they're mounted against, much like a G.I. Joe Skyhawk. These don't swivel up and down, unfortunately. Okay, so this is propulsion. Like I said, it's laughably large compared to the whole thing, but it definitely makes a statement. Now, I just want to talk a little bit more about the body before I close out the overall looking at the Cobra Rat. And if you go down below the jet engines, there is like another, looks like a little conventional piston engine below that. And maybe that's to drive those extra grip trench climbing treads. But it sticks a little out of place for me. While I like the added detail, the way this hovercraft is, I could have appreciated a smoother texture down there. Looking at this from a detail side, it would probably more fit thematically. Another thing about the body of the Cobra Rat is in the front, right before the pilot, there are 10 spikes that stick straight up. And then in the back, on each corner, there's another 4 spikes. So 18 spikes total. I guess that's just to help people get out of the way or just impale your enemy. They're not really long enough to do much damage, but I can just see them being annoying enough to direct anyone foolish enough to try to stop the Cobra Rat to go into a more vulnerable position where they could be attacked by the Gatling cannons. All right, so looking at the Rat in play and how I would use it, I think this is definitely an attack vehicle, much like the Cobra Buzzbore. I think it's definitely infantry support. I think that this would be more intimidating on a large scale. I think Cobra would be producing these cheaply and en masse. So you could put your Cobra Vipers in here. You could put your Cobra Bats in here. This is definitely a cannon fodder kind of vehicle where I would think the Cobra leadership would hang back. This wouldn't be a tip of the spear type vehicle. It would be more of a swarm and overwhelm type of play pattern or war pattern, as it were. That said, taking a look at how many I would have in my collection, I have the 1. I wouldn't be against having a second one. I think if I had a second one, it would have to be just as nice as the one that I have in my collection now. But it's not something that I want to just run out and be like, you know what, today's the day I get my second Cobra Rat. I think if I had my full setup downstairs, as I'm still building it a little bit in my mind, I'm still cleaning out things. I think there might be a day where if I had my little Cobra wall diorama type thing set up, I could say, yeah, okay, today is the day for my second Cobra Rat. If I was playing with this, doing play motions or something, yeah, I could see myself wanting 2 or 3 of these. But right now, where I'm currently at in my collection and the way I'm curating that, I think the 1 is good for now. Now, about other people's collections, well, it's a Neon 90s vehicle. That era is not, unfortunately, for everyone. Is there anybody that could say that the Cobra Rat is their favorite vehicle? I don't know. I think this is skewed younger towards the G.I. Joe audience. So if somebody was born in, say, 1987, so they were 5 in 1992, I can see this being a good first toy for a little kid. And I can see somebody really having an attachment to this. I think it has its quirks, and I think some of its quirks make it cute. Now, does cute equal Cobra? Not usually, but cute makes it a good toy. And that's what I'm reviewing here. I'm reviewing the toy and trying to present all angles, or being the devil's advocate for the positive attributes of the Rat, while also acknowledging that there are some negative attributes as well. Now that I'm here, how many out of 5, 0 to 5 gyrating slicer blades would I give the Cobra Rat? I think it's cute. I think it is simple. I think that the spinning rotor blades gimmick doesn't work well. I think that there is some issues with the marketing on this thing. It is a low, it's a cheap vehicle, so that's something also to consider. And the other thing is, I don't hate this vehicle either. I don't understand why it gets so much hate. There are worse vehicles, toys, or trailers in the G.I. Joe toy line than this Cobra Rat. It has the niche, the environment I would put this in would be something like a marsh. And right now it's raining outside and I really want to get a picture of this. So I have a really good idea of, how to capture this in its element. With that, this comes across to me as just a little below average because it doesn't work as advertised. And with that, I'm going to have to give this a 2 out of 5 gyrating slicer blades. And that ends this Missal for the Masses. This has been the Chaplain's Motor Pod. I have been your host, Gary. Thank you for listening. And on whatever podcatching platform that you listen to this on, if you could leave a review, you could rate this, you can like this, share this. Anything that you would like to do to interact with this podcast only helps this podcast grow and get better. Also, if you're listening on Spotify, our host, there will be a poll and a question if you feel like answering those as well. And every so often, I do remember to read them during a Missal. Now, for more Chaplin's Motor Pod, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, even YouTube at Chaplain Joe Pod, all one word. And if you would like to send an email, chaplainjoepod@gmail.com. The Chaplin's Motor Pod is the strange, but not estranged, nerdy little brother of The Pint, a pop culture podcast. You can find The Pint just by searching The Pint Podcast on social media, and you can get their details as well. The link will also be in the description below. With all of that out of the way, one final Missal before we leave. Be decent to each other.